Hi, I'm Jennifer Chow. I'm the Senior Director for Climate Resilient Food Systems at the Environmental Defense Fund. I will keep it short. If you're interested, we can talk more about EDF after the session. But I think my job today is to have us tell a compelling story about farmers as innovators in less than an hour. So really it will just be a taste, and hopefully you will join us after the session and at the reception, and we can continue to have the conversation as well. But really, we're hoping to connect real-world food systems transformation that's already underway with the dialogue and the actions that are taking place here. Right? So we're really hoping this to be a hopeful session, showcasing what farmers are already doing to adapt, what they need, and showcasing the solutions that are around the world. Obviously, there's no one-size-fits-all. But I wanted to also invite Theo de Jager up on stage, and we'll have just a short fireside chat, if you will, before we move on to the rest of the program. So Theo, I don't really have a bio prepared for you, but I know that you were recently the head of the World Farmers Organization. Before that, you headed SACAO, the South African Confederation of Agricultural Unions, PAFO, the Pan-African Farmers Organization. I'm not sure which organization you have not had a hand in, but you probably do not need much of an introduction. You've really been a great champion and voice of farmers around the world, but obviously specifically in Africa for quite a long time, and we're really excited to have you on stage to share some of your wisdom. I wanted to kick us off by asking you maybe a sort of basic question around, how have you already seen farmers adapting? And what is it that they're really asking for today? Over to you.
Thank you very much. There is this misconception that you have this category of people in the world who are farmers. Farmers are not the same. No two farmers farm the same. It might be the oldest profession in the world. It might still be today the biggest profession in the world. But farmers differ from country to country and continent to continent. And the circumstances under which farmers must eke out a living in Africa is not the same as the farmers in North America. It's not the same as the farmers in Asia. So when we talk about adapting and adopting new technologies, the questions we should ask about it is not the same. Solutions, for example, to climate on farms in Africa will always be different to those in Europe, to those in Australasia. There is no one size fits all. You actually need to go from farm to farm if you look for solutions. But there are a few principles which are exactly the same, no matter what you farm, no matter how you farm. And I'm going to talk to those similarities. The first rule is that farming is about soil. There is no farming in space. All farming starts with soils. And the healthier your soils, the healthier your business. So we need the kind of innovation who will not deplete our soils and who will maintain the health of it. Secondly, I refer to our businesses, because no matter where you farm, no matter how big or small, farming is a business, and the business must make profit. If a farm is not profitable, it's a welfare case. We have way too many of those. We need to help our farmers to survive in their businesses, meaning we must maintain their profitability. There's a lot of talk about sustainability, especially here at COP. But sustainability starts with profitability. If a farm is not profitable, it's not sustainable. The farmer is going to lose his land. So in many of our poorest farming areas, like in our neck of the woods in Africa, the big challenge is the business side of farming, not so much the aggregation side. Then the third rule is, a farmer is a manager. A farmer is always a manager. And to manage, you need to be able to measure. What is unmeasurable is unmanageable. And most of our most recent innovations in agriculture, all over the world, all sizes of enterprises, is about measurements. This is what the digital era brought into agriculture, the ability to measure and to track the measurements. Whether it is blockchain, whether it is on artificial intelligence, whether it's on traceability. And then fourthly, like in any business, the most important person is the customer. For us in agriculture, for farmers, it's the consumers who are the most important people in our lives. We live for them. Everything we do for them. If the consumers will not buy our stuff, we're out of business. And that brings a lot of new innovation. It's about the way we interact with consumers, about the way we talk to them, we communicate to them, and back to about how we hear what they want. Because as farmers, consumers is not a homogeneous group of people, and they are changing all the time. And as fast as they are changing what they want and what they need, so fast we must also adapt. They are pulling the chain in the value chains. They are our markets. And then the most important part for me is that no matter whether you go to Canada or New Zealand, to Argentina or to Russia, farmers are getting older and older. The average age of farmers is worrying. You won't believe it, but I'm actually still below the global average age of farmers. So we cannot talk about innovation in agriculture without talking about the youth. What excites me most in my life, the biggest joy I had from being involved in organized agriculture over the last 20 years, is in engagements with farmers who are not yet 30 years old. Is to see the stars in the eyes of young people who believe that there is a future in agriculture because everybody must eat all the time. And it's because they believe that there's not only a life out there for farmers, but there is a good life for them, something which you can aspire to. So, although there's also in this COP a lot on the agenda, on agriculture's footprint on nature, on biodiversity, on climate, there's a lot of talk about financing, how to build a financial bridge from where we are now to where we need to be. And there is some talk, not enough, about the youth, the role of the new generation. We should talk less about them and we should talk more to them. Because every time you speak to a young farmer, you have a glimpse into the future of agriculture. They are the ones who are going to make it work. So we must fuel their dreams all the time and source innovation from them. We have a golden rule in organized agriculture. In my years in WFO, at every engagement with the youngsters, we said, dare to dream big. If your dreams don't scare you, you must dream over. You must dream out the world that needs to be, or else it will never be. From my side, thank you.
Thank you, Theo. Very powerful. I'm going to ask one quick follow-up. I think we probably are stretching time just a minute, but you know, we are at a climate COP, and we talk about engaging the youth and the next sort of generation or vision for agriculture, for food production in general. So I want to talk a little bit about risk diversification. How do we help attract the next generation or talk about food production in a way that seems attractive and safe in this sort of world today? What have you seen from your experience in terms of farmers being able to diversify risk in a creative or innovative way that perhaps allows this to look like an attractive venture in this climate stress world that we have now?
Once again, the question or the answer will not be applicable all over. I have seen farmers diversify geographically, also moving to areas far away from their home farm, so that if there is a natural disaster, you have only lost your crop on the one farm, the other one might have been missed. More exciting is the diversification in their involvement in the value chain. Many farmers get involved both upstream and downstream. A farmer have a challenge to get seed into his area. So he starts a business and bringing seed into his area and also servicing other farmers. Or downstream, in the processing, the packaging, the distribution. We always try to get young farmers to integrate their interests vertically in the value chains. But more and more, you find that farmers get involved in other sectors of society. Most common in our area in Southern Africa, young farmers also have businesses linked to the digital world or to the internet. Very often they get involved in data. More and more I see they get involved in financing because they solved some problems for themselves and they make a business out of these solutions. And of course the world became an extremely small place for farmers. Every farmer is every day in competition with the best other farmers in the world. So the farmer of the late 2020s and the early 2030s, those who are still too young now, will probably have to be global business people.
Thank you very much, Theo. I think it's definitely a challenge, and I think you really bring about the point that farmers truly are entrepreneurs, which we sometimes forget. Thank you so much. Maybe you can join us for conversation in a little bit when we have a question and answer period, if that's okay. Thank you, Theo. I'm going to move to the side because I'm going to invite our panelists up and start with, I believe, a virtual panelist. Do we have Jose Luis Chacoma on? We know, virtually. While I wait for that, why don't I introduce our other panelists right now? And let me just make sure I get all the titles correct. Okay, can I have Noura Aman first? Where is Noura? Yeah, on stage. Farm Africa Program Leader for Red Plus and FSD projects in Ethiopia. Thank you so much for joining us. We will, oh good. So let me just tell you, well, let me finish with the panelists. Padraic Flood, right in front of me, thank you. Team lead for crop genetics and chief impact officer at Infarm, who will also kick us off for the demo part of this after the panel is done. Patricia Pinho, deputy science advisor at UPAM. Nicola Dyer with the Safe Seaweed Coalition, who I believe is online, and Omar Farhate, the IAS World President, or previous, and co-head of the Food and Ag Youth Institute right now. So here's how this is going to work. Right now, I'm going to ask Jose Luis, who I have not introduced actually, former Minister of Production from Peru, among many other things, to give us a little bit of a scene setter. I'll start you off with a question. Jose Luis, you can hear me, I assume. And then I will ask our panelists a round of questions, give you not very much time to answer, but hopefully keep it dynamic and moving with a second set of questions, and then hopefully a little bit of time for Q&A with audience. So it's a bit ambitious, and we'll see how it goes, but we have such a great panel, and I hope you will enjoy this as much as I will. So Jose Luis, as somebody who has had really the privilege of many perspectives, in addition to being a former production minister, You ran a food think tank in Mexico, have a farming background yourself. Will you please share with us, in terms of us here talking about the future of food, what do you actually think needs to happen to get us to that future? And from maybe a production minister's point of view, what do you think a production minister really needs to be successful? So maybe, hopefully, those are not too difficult, but we'd really be interested in what you have to share. Thanks. Okay, we cannot hear Jose Luis yet. No, not yet. Give us 1 minute. I'm sorry, we can't hear you, Jose Luis. You look great on the screen, I'll say that. But if we have technical difficulties continuing, maybe we'll hold you and turn to the panel. What do we think? Oh.
No.
Yeah?
Can you hear us? I think it's not working.
Yes. We hear you now, Jose Luis.
Finally, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for the kind introduction. Thank you for the invitation to this wonderful panel that in these difficult times I hope is going to give us some hope for the future. Actually, I'm going to be a little bit critical, so I give the other, but I hope the other panelists are going to give me some hope and give us some hope. Actually see the future with an accelerated transition towards agroecology. And this is like very serious and decisive approaches to both environment and social inclusion. Agroecology, as you all know, is systemic in its approach and it's related with many other changes, like having diverse and traditional diets that are based on local diversity, biodiversity, and that are less dependent on imported foods. And it's also related with giving agency and a priority in public policies and investments to small-scale food producers. And it's, of course, related with transformative changes in how we are producing our food systemically, linking the environment with social inclusion, with human needs for healthier and affordable food. And of course, it's one of the key elements to mitigate and adapt to climate change. If we don't push agroecology hard enough, we are not going to be able to win the battle against climate change. But, and I mentioned that I was going to be critical, I don't see right now, with the current mindset that many stakeholders have all over the world, I don't see a future in we see that accelerated transition towards agroecology. And sorry for being negative in these times, but this is part related with my experience with different stakeholders in Peru at the national level, but also global level, where I see that these key stakeholders and decision makers don't take into consideration two issues. One is sustainability, and the other is social inclusion. So I'll talk briefly about sustainability, because even with this clear understanding that climate change is here with us to change our lives and to change our planets, it's still not easy to include sustainability as a priority in public policies, especially with the stakeholders that are related with the economic sectors. This happens with the ministries related with production, for example, with economy, with finance, but also global stakeholders from big like development banks that don't necessarily include sustainability as strong as they should now in 2022. And my experience with that is the mandate of my ministry, the Ministry of Production, was always seen as scaling up production. Environmental sustainability has never been a part of the DNA of that ministry, and with many other ministries in the developing world and all over the world actually that are in charge of economic sectors. And that single-minded focus has always surprised me, because sustainability is seen as many of these ministries as a threat to economic growth. So the actors that usually convene at an event like the COP are those more related and engaged with environmental policies, but they go back to their countries to push for implementation and funds for those commitments, and it's kind of hard. And actually, like very often, the nemesis of the economic ministries or the production ministries, the nemesis is the Minister of the Environment. You know, in my case, the Minister of the Environment was one of my closest colleagues. I came up with a different set of priorities and actually considered sustainability as part of my mandate. But for many of my traditional stakeholders in the private sector and the rest of the government, I was seen as an environmentalist that infiltrated in a ministry that was related with production and economy. So that was the worst insult that they could throw to me. But for me, it was actually like a big compliment and an incentive to work till the very last day of my administration to pass regulations to promote sustainability. In my case, I was in charge of the fishing industry. We passed many regulations for sustainability of maki-maki, octopus, scallops, and others, but also on agricultural value chains, on the process that I was in charge of that. But it's not easy. It's not easy to promote that sustainability perspective when your mandate is to increase GDP, and that happens with many different stakeholders that still believe that caring about that is not going to be efficient for the economy. And another brief example on that was we were working hard to get a loan from a development bank to fund innovation in value chains, including food value chains, agricultural value chains. And with this loan, we were going to fund innovation in Peru for the next 5 years. And as Minister of Production, I was the counterpart of this development bank, and I asked them specifically to make a requirement that a third of the projects funded by this loan were related with sustainability and biodiversity protection, and in many ways of the environment. And we actually faced many obstacles from this development bank. They tried many different ways to avoid including environmental sustainability in this law. For them, it wasn't important. And this was not 30 years ago. This was last year. No? It was now that climate change is a reality that will change the planet and humanity. And we finally approved the loan with that component based on sustainability because we insisted, but it was hard with negotiations until the last minute, and we were with a deadline. The administration was ending, and it was terrible. It was a disappointing process, actually, because we were having as an adversary in our fight against climate change. This adversary was an organization that says it's committed to sustainability when it really isn't. So there's a lot of greenwashing. Many organizations and experts in the establishment of global development still consider sustainability as something accessory. They also consider social inclusion as something accessory. And they don't say it openly, but it's clear when you negotiate and when you deal with them. And many stakeholders, this is why they don't want to promote something like agroecology. They don't want to promote real changes in how food is produced. They still want to promote marginal changes. Some of these small changes are part of a broad and ambiguous term, and I'm going to be critical. A term like climate smart agriculture is a term that is not decisive, nor strong, nor comprehensive as agroecology. And these small changes don't include a real transformation, and they don't actually make small-scale food producers the priority of public policies and programs as they should be. So my conclusion is that we need to change those mindsets to to, 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 to put forward these stories where people and many important stakeholders say that they care about climate change and sustainability, but they don't, no? And to get together and talk about how we should include these small scale food producers that actually are the guardians of biodiversity and have the key to unlock all the potential of this biodiversity to fight climate change also, and to promote real innovations and real and decisive innovations, the innovations that we're going to hear in this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jose Luis, for giving us some very specific challenges and potential solutions from your perspective. I won't dwell on those because I know we're very short on time, and I want to hear from Noura Aman. I think one of the main themes we're really talking about here is nature and people living in harmony, and how do we do that? It's a really difficult question, and I think we're all offering our perspectives and solutions that we've heard from the field or that we've experienced ourselves. So Noura, would you mind sharing with us your experience from adapting and helping others to adapt in the field, and what kind of innovations you're bringing to the table or seeing brought to bear?
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Noura Aman. I came from Ethiopia, the land of biodiversity, but unfortunately we are at the back, having a lot of biodiversity resource and a lot of things. Of course, everybody knows that the magnitude and the rate of climate change, ecological and the social and economic change is really immense and affecting the life and the livelihood of the local communities, those who are actually depend on the natural resource for their survival. So, in fact, we as NGO, as Farm Africa, what we were doing was we were critically thinking of how we can really design the system and the approach that can reconcile the food security, the livelihood, the climate change, and the conservation objectives. And we really think of the systems, the approach that strives to bring the triple win of the poverty, as well as the conservation and the tackling the climate resilience. And so that we have to think of the integrated approach that really diversifies the options for the livelihood of the community, and also conserve the natural resource and the biodiversity, and also increase the sustainability of the livelihood of the people, and also tackling the social, the climate change. So, 10 to 12 years back, we critically sit and think with the community, with the development actors, and we develop the integrated land management approach, The approach which considers actually ecosystem connection, economic cooperation, and also, the enhances the participation and engagement of the local communities and the government and the different stakeholders. So with that, actually, we as Farm Africa, what we did was this approach and the framework enable us to actually work on the conservation, and especially the adaptation and mitigation areas. So what the action that we did is mainly aims to strengthen the conservation of the natural resource landscape, So in this, like we were focusing on the forest and also on the land. We work on the restoration, we work on the ecosystem conservation, and also we actually designed the system, especially that encourage the farmers to participate in the management of the natural forest, especially that enables them to enhance their participation and also enhance their benefits. So we designed that PFM, that is participatory forest management system, that consider especially the communities as the custodian, not as, the threat to the natural resource. So with that, actually, we designed that, and we have also even promote and encourage the ecosystem service payment. Like especially we have been implementing the Red Plus. So we of course achieve the payment from the ecosystem service through Red Plus, and that of course enhances and incentivize the community to participate in the conservation, and enhance in the participate enables them to actually protect the illegal entrance into the natural resource. That is one thing. The other is actually we are working on the agriculture. So we promote the conservation of the water, especially, and also the pest management. And also we are working on the food system, especially like we promote the healthy diets, and in the creating is access, and in the availability, and also consumption for the people, so that we promote the businesses that encourage the value chain development of the food systems. And also even we are working on the freshwater protection and the conservation, and the critical biodiversity hotspot conservations. So in that way, we can really save the ecosystem that can serve the future, and as well as the current generations, that can really generate the benefits for the local communities, that can really contribute to the sustainability of the food production. Because unless and otherwise we conserve and we protect the natural resource that really serve us. So
Right.
we lose it unless and otherwise we really focus in the conserve, and also participate the people around there. So
Thank you.
that is how we have been actually and doing, and of course that integrated landscape management is somehow the thing is that enhances the coordination, the integration, working with the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nora. I know there's so much more behind your words that we cannot fully unpack right now, but thank you for sharing that little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Padraic. And I know one of the other themes is really around, and I've heard Theo talk about this a lot, is we need to produce more on less, with less. So share with us your thoughts on how we do that without crossing our planetary boundaries. And how do we increase crop yields using less?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot. So I suppose I'm a new kind of farmer, and I think that's exemplified because the first principle of farming that you spoke about, Theo, doesn't apply to us. We don't use soil. So that's a pretty different way of doing things. And it's also key to how I think we can really contribute towards a more resilient and sustainable future. Because what we try to do is to produce food without impacting the external environment, and also without depending upon it. In other words, we try to decouple food production from ecosystem destruction. And we do that by using what is commonly termed indoor farming or vertical farming. So basically, we come to it from the perspective of technology. We're trying to reinvent how you produce food, My personal role in this is I try to create the crops of the future for the food system of the future.
Thank you. Very short and sweet. Hopefully we can reward you by coming back to you in a short bit. So, Patricia, I'm going to go to you next. You know, you work directly with farmers to scale up forest conservation, including things that, for example, Noor was talking about with compensation and other knowledge. So what are the lessons you've learned in working to engage farmers and farming communities in really co-creating solutions?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I'm Patricia Pinho. I'm Science Director of Environmental Research Institute. And an IPCC lead author as well. So we know that the Amazon standing forest is crucial for the global climate service that it provides, but also many other ecosystem service. But we also know that the country, Brazil specifically, has, you know, been pushed a lot in growing farm for commodities, soybean and sugarcane and all coffee. So how can we combine, or how can we incentivize? We know that the forest is also beneficial to the productivity of these commodities. So we try to change the mindset of the producers. We are talking about large properties where they are obliged to protect some parts of the forest according to our forest code. Nonetheless, all the farms that has excedent of the forest native vegetation, they usually chop down the forest to grow the commodities. So what we are doing is like we are analyzing and got all the amount of forest that is still standing within private property and private property. It's a long jet lag, you guys. And try to incentivize and protect and engage with the finance system and also with the consumers for paying the farmers as a form of payment for ecosystem service so they can leave the stand forest. So, and what we are finding is that it started as a pilot in 2017 and is going on and is growing. We have around 20 large properties engaged in this scheme. And then we not only saw the protection of the forest, but also increasing productivity of soybean and all the other commodities, and also giving the farmer like the benefit of producing in a smaller space with more ecosystem benefits, if you will, including pollination, water resource, and climate regulation. So this has been an amazing experience, and we are not only attempting them to get the extent of carbon credits to negotiate. So we are both addressing mitigation, adaptation strategies, and also engaging with the finance market and the consumers. In a nutshell, that's basically our program.
Very holistic and difficult, because there's many parts when we talk about a systems approach. Yes. Thanks, Patricia. I saw Nicola very quickly on the screen. Hopefully she's still there. Nicola, I'm going to come to you. Nicola's with the Safe...
Nicola is still here.
Oh, great. Nicola's with the Save Seaweed Coalition. Nicola, why don't you share with us why seaweed is suddenly such an exciting topic? And maybe a little bit about the trajectory of seaweed from a little-known field to really a viable solution. But Nicola, you only have a couple of minutes, okay?
I guess. Thanks, Jennifer. So suddenly, not exactly suddenly, because seaweed's actually been exciting for people like our scientific director for 30 plus years. And those of us who've been really fighting to get aquatic foods integrated into the thinking about food systems in general, we've also been paying attention, some of us have been paying attention to seaweed as well. So we've been delighted to see it actually getting integrated into those conversations, thanks for instance, in part to the Food Systems Summit that allowed for that shift in mindsets. Because simply put, if we don't change our mindsets, if we don't begin to include the ocean in our thinking, then first of all, we're missing 70% of the Earth's surface. So that's just on an absolute level. And then we're also missing, crucially, the interactions that are there. So seaweed's exciting for many, many reasons. It contributes to many of the SDGs. I would encourage the audience to consult the Seaweed Manifesto launched by one of our supporters, UN Global Compact, in 2020. Let me highlight a couple of things. It's a nutritional powerhouse. It can be used as food for humans and feed for animals, both marine and land animals. It has potential benefits on the nutritional front. And let me highlight also for this audience, its importance on the environmental front, its ability to help to restore coastal ecosystems, marine ecosystems. Its ability to reoxygenate and deacidify ocean waters. It's been shown, scientists have shown, that seaweed provides habitat for other species. It supports high levels of biodiversity. It facilitates trophic linkages, so linkages between the different levels of animal life and of life within the ocean. Cultivating and restoring it can contribute significantly to sustainability and ecosystem restoration. I would love to have more time. I'm going to stop there so that you give me more time after. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Nicola. Omar, I'm going to turn right to you and hopefully pick up on where Theo left off with some of his youth comments. If you could maybe share with us what role you would like to see the world's youth play in agriculture and in the food policy space. I think that's really something that will be a big part of the conversation here on food systems too.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. I am happy to speak here as a young Moroccan and as a former president of the International Association of Students in Agricultural and Related Sciences. And in my opinion, the role I see youth play in the food and agriculture policy space and debate, well, I would like to summarize it in 3 words. I would say innovation, advocacy, and impact. I think there is a need to support and empower global organizations, umbrella organizations, and federations that work in the field of agriculture for students, because they are able to represent young people's voice, bottom up, and I think that young people can be advocates. They are able to represent the voice of their communities and drive resilience and social change. Young people can be innovators. They can come up with the most creative solutions out there for the pressing issues of the planet. I have an example sitting in front of me, Matthias. He's from Ghana, and he has a project called AcoFresh, which is a cooling system to prevent food waste in storage and using solar panels. So we can be innovators and we can really come up with creative solutions. But the most important role of young people that I would like you all to remember is that we can be troublemakers. And if we are not on your side, you do not want us on the other side. So we are not scared to bring the neglected areas around us to the table and hold the world leaders accountable for their actions and promises. And this is really what I would like young people to play in this scene, to be innovators, advocates, and troublemakers.
Excellent, thank you. I chuckle thinking about raising my own children as troublemakers. So I'm going to do something a little different and check with the audience and see if the audience has any burning questions, ideally for more than one of our panelists. I had some other questions prepared, but who cares about those questions? Let's see what the audience would like to say. Yes, and then I'll just let you know, I'll give you guys each a minute or two in case there were things that you really wanted to say that you were saving. I'll let you do that at the end too. But let's go ahead to the first question. And can we take them all at the same time? Because we really don't have a lot of time. So if you have another question, this is really your one chance. So be prepared and raise your hand right after we're done with this one.
Thank you so much. It's very, very exciting to be in this panel. My name is Sofia. I'm 18 years old. I'm from Peru. And I am very enthusiastic about food systems. And I wanted to echo something that most of you mentioned, that was this necessity to have a change of mindset when we try to build resilient food systems and youth-led solutions that can be very innovative and change the situation of various vulnerable communities around the world. And I relate so much to what Jose Luis mentioned about how a lot of stakeholders may not be willing to cooperate when we're trying to push sustainability policies. But I think that something that we should consider in that situation is something that my fellow young advocate mentioned, and is that we can include youth-led organizations in this process and use the power of social inclusion to push sustainability policies into national policies that at the end will have a direct impact in the situation of vulnerable communities. But I think that this should be a relationship of reciprocity, which means that as communities, we cooperate with you as politicians pushing policies, but we also need the resources to continue with the solutions that we have and that we're implementing. In Peru, in my city of Lima, I'm from the district of Comas, and if Jose Luis can place my district, it's a peripheral area of the city. And we face the consequences of ineffective policies in food systems. And with an organization called Ollas Sostenibles, we work building biodigesters and community gardens in human settlements and other peripheral communities, such as Pamplona Alta and a community in Chorrillos. Maybe Jose Luis can locate those two. But one of the main problems that we face is that we do not have resources to build the tech solutions that we want to implement. We do not have people that we can ask questions to, hey, how do we do this? Or how can we talk to the people in power to start growing these solutions that at the end will benefit all of us. So I think that if we have that reciprocity relationship with the government and the communities, we can achieve a lot of amazing things. And my question is, apart from what I mentioned of you having our support as young people for the policies that we want to push, because if stakeholders are not already cooperating, we are going to make them listen. And we are troublemakers, and you are going to need all of us from peripheral areas of rapidly growing cities to support this, because we are a lot of people that are facing the consequences of these policies, and it is hurtful and it is discouraging that stakeholders are not paying attention to our solutions. But apart from that, apart from having resources, apart from having support, what else do you think that we could implement in that relationship of reciprocity when building resilient food systems? I would like to know if you have any inputs on that, or if you have any ideas of how we could collaborate together to keep building these solutions to build at the end a sustainable world and a just transition. Thank you so much, and it was very exciting to listen to you all.
Thank you. So I think we have 2 hands, and I think that's going to have to be it.
Yeah, I'm Aya. I'm from Morocco. I am also working with the food systems. Yeah, I would like to stand. Yeah, I want to talk about farmers, because the average age of a farmer is 57 years old, and that's quite old. We have now quite some young farmers interested in the field and would like to work more with people, with decision makers, with the funders, but they don't get support. We are here, we want to really be on the ground, be called the young farmers, but we don't receive support as young people. So I would like to know, how do you work with farmers, and especially young farmers, and according to regions? Because when we come up with the solution to accelerate action on food and food systems, it's not applicable in all corners of the world, because regions and countries are different. So I'd like to know how you work with young farmers and in different regions.
Thank you. And last one? Thank you. It relates to both questions, actually. I'm Italian, I'm European, so the land management system is way different as the researcher colleague, I guess, over there were saying. And in my research institute, we work with the land, water security, and food security. And what we were studying recently is the inertia of the system to change. So my question maybe connects to all of that, of the previous one, saying how do you fight this inertia of the land management system? And how, can you give us some good and best practices that you have seen that are capable of addressing a sustainable food production system? Okay, I'm glad I'm the moderator and I don't have to answer any of those. Theo, you're welcome to answer as well, and Nicola's laughing at me, and Jose Luis. So here's what I'll say. I'll give each of you 1 or 2 minutes to either answer the questions and or give any burning last statement that you would like to give. You know, one thing I was going to ask was actually similar to the questions, which is, you know, what sort of challenges or resources do you yourselves feel really need to be on the table? And so if that's helpful to you to orient your closing statement. But why don't I go in order just closest from me and start with Padraic?
Yeah, so I cannot really speak to the questions about communication between youth, and that's not my area. I'm a scientist. But on your question about breaking inertia, from my perspective, it's about disruption. So if the system's not working, what can we do to break it and to make it work again? And that's what I'm trying to do. And also following on from what Theo said, like dream big. That's what we're doing. We're dreaming big. We're looking at an invention which is the foundation of civilization, farming, which is now threatening civilization. And we need to do something about that. And I think technology certainly has a role to play. All of what has been spoken about has a role to play today. But if we want to break the inertia, I think we need to just rethink things.
To respond quickly, on September, I was on a festival that is called Food and Science Festival, which is organized by the Agricultural Productive System of Italy. And in this panel, there was only men. There were only like 8 men persons saying that they were against the sustainable food production system and what the EU was about to regulate with the new CAP regulation, and they were against all other different kind of productive system that were not on land. So, you know, we were the only one looking at us and saying, okay, I'm going to stand up and fight against all these people, but in the end, we were alone. We were the only researcher against these ideas. Well, these are not easy issues we're talking about, right? We're talking about sustainability and economic growth at the same time. And sometimes it's hard for them to go hand in hand. Nora, let me turn to you and to offer your last thoughts too.
Yeah, in fact, every problem that happens in different areas maybe, you know, has to be solved based on the areas and based on the context. And what really very important and the key thing is whenever we solve the problem, we have to be very inclusive. And we have to really engage all those who are really affected by these problems. And also the policymakers, the practitioners, and all those peoples really need to be engaged and they have to be really discussed. And the solution will be, in fact, based on the area context that really happens in that areas. So we have to think of, especially like most of the time from the climate change, the people who are really suffering nowadays is a young generation. Those who are really directly receiving the problem. So we have to really engage them. And we have to also even the women, especially in the developing countries, they are really suffer more. So they have to be part of the solution, and they have to be really engaged, and they need to be recognized. And the one thing that maybe I want to add, not only actually engaging the people, but they have to be really heard. The voice of the people, the women, the young generations, those who really voices, it has to be really heard by the politicians, the policy makers. That is how we can actually make the changes that we need really happen to be real. That is what I can add, yes.
Thank you, Nora. Patricia, go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with the break the system. And that's what we are trying to do. And then I think the big problem of what you describe and what you see, we have seen in many areas, including research, is that it's highly unequal, the process of food systems and food production, and who gets the burden of feeling all the impact, even on health or in the economic gains or depletion of ecosystem service, are the ones that are least contributing to the big crisis. So in a way, I think this whole process of engaging the very powerful, there are like very powerful people, industry, and that don't want to change the system, but the majority wants the system to be changed. And then I would encourage the troublemakers to say, to raise their flags, and you have all of us together. And then I think that's what we need to do. It's like make them hear more and more and more about the impact of the systems that they are creating, food systems that are not even being healthy for people. So we need to change that and address the inequality of food systems, and both on the production and also exporting time. I think that's what I would encourage.
Thanks, Patricia. Omar, and then we'll turn it over to Nicola and Jose Luis. You'll each have a minute,
Yeah.
and then to Theo to close us out.
Yeah, thank you very much. Change the system, that's the way forward, I would say. But practically, how can we do that? How can we change the system as young people and drive resilience and social change? How can we do that? I would answer that by saying, join umbrella organizations of youth, come together, make consultation processes, collaborate with each other, and throughout the consultation process, figure out what are the issues you want to change, what are the problems in your areas, in your regions, or at the global level. And from the global areas, find out who is responsible. If it's an unworking policy, which specific agency, which specific person is in charge? Who is responsible? And we need to hold people accountable. And then the last step would be to call for action and call every single person from these people we're able to list. What do we call them? What do we would like to change? And we need to merge all of these outcomes all together in position papers, in policy documents, and we need to defend them together. This is the way forward, I would say, and this is how we can drive resilience and social change. Thank you.
Thanks, Omar. Nicola.
Thank you. So, first to answer the questions very quickly, how to collaborate with youth. For us in the Save Seaweed Coalition, if you're interested, please join our Seaweed Ambassadors program. Check it out on our website. And in terms of breaking the inertia, I want to build on the comments that have been made. Number one is measure. In terms of seaweed, so measure and render accountable. So building on what Omar has just said, designate specific responsibility somewhere within government for seaweed, for data and for policy with respect to seaweed. That's not done. Integrate it into the systems of national accounts. That's not fully done right now. So, and the other is let me go back to integrating the thinking across land and sea. Don't stop the thinking at the shoreline, but extend it to that 70% of the world that is covered by the ocean. Basing the work in science. There is a lot of excitement about seaweed and climate. We urge caution on that because we are excited by it. Don't get me wrong. There's really promising research out there on seaweed's potential impact on reducing methane emissions by ruminants, but we have to be careful about it. If it's done right, then it could reduce the food system's overall carbon footprint. But long-term studies are needed to see what's the impact on cow's milk and meat, and the type of seaweed matters. And as seaweeds grow naturally, they capture carbon because they're plants. They eat carbon. That's what they do. There's a lot of excitement. Hey, grow seaweed, sequester carbon. Yes, we're done. Well, not quite. We urge caution. There is research out there that says be careful about that because it's not quite so simple. Ground yourself in the science. Do want to give a shout out to 2 seaweed actors who are finalists in the Earthshot right now. Sea Forester in Portugal, who are reforesting kelp forests, and Notpla in the UK, which are doing plastic substitutes. They are they're doing groundbreaking work in that, and they're producing it right now. So you can go to Notpla products and you can buy them. Similarly, Lollyware, not a finalist yet. They have created substitutes for plastics, plastic straws, plastic cups that are designed to disappear. They're made of seaweed. Couple more recommendations: harmonize regulations and standards globally. They're a patchwork right now. Do it right, celebrate and support innovations that are science-based. Recognize the systemic impact that seaweed has, so we really do need to understand those interactions. It could be the right solution in one setting, or it could create problems in another, so be careful about unintended consequences. Don't get caught up in the hype. On the other hand, be optimistic and ground oneself in science, because if we collectively do it right, seaweed, we believe, has enormous potential, known and yet to be discovered, to contribute to achieving the SDGs and beyond. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicola. Jose Luis, are you still with us?
Yes, of course.
You have 1 minute, Jose Luis.
The youth is like the natural ally of those that really want significant change a decisive change on food systems. So, of course, they should be included in these conversations. They aren't as much as they should, as small-scale food producers are not included and other vulnerable groups, but they should. So, my recommendation is to ally with those organizations that really want a decisive change on food systems. And on the issue of connecting different problems like food security and water security, yes, that requires a systemic perspective on food that we are still promoting at the global, national, and local level. And that's probably going to change many of the ways that we interact in civil society, in governments, in the national governance of food systems. And that is for sure urgent. Thank you.
Theo, would you like to use that one?
Thank you for a wonderful discussion too. I'm especially excited about the questions that came from the young ones. And the most important question, I think, was the last one. So how do I start? Where do I find the finances to start it? Although this is the biggest and the most common profession in the world, the barriers to entry is so high that in many countries it's really impossible to start if you come from nowhere, if you do not inherit a farm. And there is no simple solutions to that. I started farming very late in my life. I was 37 when I got to a farm as a manager. Because my dad said to me, when I asked him to send me to an agricultural school, you will never be a farmer. Because to be a farmer, you need to have a farm. And if you don't inherit that, you won't have it. Now, I got a break. I got a lucky break. But I have many friends who wish they had a lucky break. The fact is that things are changing so fast. Technology is changing so fast. None of us are fast enough to just keep up with the changes in technology. So if you cannot catch it by chasing it, you have to leapfrog into the future and wait for it to catch up with you. And I think it is possible with new kinds of production. And although I'm very excited about all the new kinds of indoor production and laboratory-grown production, that will not feed 2 billion more people in our lifetimes. We still need to find a way to produce more food in the next 30 years than what we have produced in the last few hundreds of years. And it is because my generation do not know how to do it that we rely on a new generation with new technologies to do it. There's one more thing I want to leave in your midst. This is again to the last question of where do you find the resources to do it? Where do you get the money from? You see, although it is way too much for individuals, although at a meeting like this we can say it is unaffordable, can we afford it not to invest in new kinds of agriculture? Can we really afford not to put the money where the future of humanity is? It's a different side of the coin. But I'm putting all my money on this COP to find that answer. If we don't find those answers here at COP, there's no other platform where we can go to for it.
Thank you very much, Theo. Thank you to all the panelists, online and in person.